I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Clay Mercer stood at his mailbox, sifting through the usual stack of bills and advertisements. The afternoon sun beat down on his neck as he flipped through envelope after envelope. Bill, flyer, credit card offer. Then his fingers froze on cream-colored cardstock with elegant script. He knew what it was before he even read the names. Inside his modest ranch-style home, Clay tossed the rest of the mail onto the kitchen counter and stared at the sealed envelope. His callous thumb traced the edge before he tore it open with a quick, efficient motion. The wedding invitation slid out, glossy, inexpensive. Marissa Langley and Nolan felt to request the honor of your presence. Clay's jaw tightened. 2 years since she'd walked out, and now this delivered right to his door like a slap in the face. The phone rang, cutting through the silence. Clay recognized his sister's number. "Did you get it?" Fallon asked without preamble. "Just now," he replied, his voice level despite the storm brewing inside. "Throw it in the trash where it belongs," Fallon said, her protective edge sharp even through the phone. "She doesn't deserve your time, Clay. Not after everything." Clay said nothing, studying the embossed lettering on the invitation. The paper probably cost more than what he'd spend on food for a week. "Clay, you still there?" "Yeah." "Tell me you're not thinking of going," Fallon pressed, the disbelief evident in her voice. "Because that would be—" "I haven't decided." Clay cut her off, though they both knew he was considering it. Later that evening, Clay sat on his back porch with Derek, both nursing beers as the summer twilight settled around them. The invitation lay on the table between them. "So," Derek said after taking a long pull from his bottle, "you gonna go?" Clay shrugged, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Don't know yet." Derek leaned forward, his auto shop logo faded on his worn t-shirt. "Man, go. Let them see you standing tall." He grinned, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Show up looking good, shake a few hands, drink their expensive booze." "It's not about revenge," Clay muttered. "Didn't say it was." Derek set his beer down with a soft clink. "But you deserve to show them that you survived. That you're still here, still you." He pointed at Clay's chest. "Still solid." Clay picked up the invitation, studying it one more time before tucking it into his shirt pocket. He wouldn't make a scene, wouldn't cause trouble, but maybe, just maybe, he needed to see it with his own eyes. The final chapter. The last nail. "I'll think about it," he said, but they both knew he'd already decided. That night, sleep evaded Clay. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, memories crowding, and despite his efforts to push them away 0.5 years ago, he'd been promoted to supervisor at Pacific Northwest Shipping. Clay had come home with a bottle of wine, nothing fancy, but the best he could afford, and told Marissa the news over dinner. "That's great, honey." Her smile hadn't quite reached her eyes. "How much more does it pay?" Clay had explained the modest salary increase, emphasizing the benefits and potential for growth. Marissa had nodded, twirling pasta around her fork. "That dental office on Westlake is hiring assistants. Dr. Peterson's wife says they pay really well, and the hours are better than the clinic I'm at now. You should apply." Clay had encouraged, genuinely wanting her to find work she enjoyed that she'd gotten the job. Then came the suggestions. They should look at houses in the North End. They should upgrade their 10-year-old sedan. They should take a real vacation, not just long weekends at the coast. Clay took on overtime shifts. Weekends. Holidays. The shipping warehouse never slept, and Clay rarely turned down extra hours. Their savings grew, but never fast enough for Marissa's taste. Now, staring at the darkened bedroom ceiling, Clay remembered the night things began to fracture beyond repair. The Thompsons just booked a cruise to Alaska, Marissa had said over takeout Chinese. They'd been too tired to cook. 15 days along the inside passage. Her eyes had sparkled with yearning. Can you imagine? Glaciers, whales, those little seaside towns. We could start planning for next summer. Clay had offered, knowing their budget was already stretched thin with a new car payment. Next summer, Marissa had repeated, disappointment evident. Always next summer or next year. "I'm doing the best I can," Clay had said quietly. "I know." Her response had come too quickly, too automatically. "But sometimes I wonder if your best is enough." A week later, she'd mentioned Nolan Felt for the first time. Regional sales manager. new to the area, handling the account for her dental office. He's taking the staff to that new steakhouse downtown to celebrate their sales numbers, she'd said, not quite meeting Clay's eyes. It might run late. It had run late. Very late. Then there were other late nights. Work events. Networking opportunities. Clay had watched his marriage dissolve one late night at a time. When Marissa finally left, she'd stood in their living room with a suitcase, looking somehow both guilty and defiant. "I need more than this, Clay," she'd said, gesturing vaguely at their modest home. "I'm suffocating in all this sameness." "It's called stability," he'd replied, not begging, not fighting, just stating a fact. "Nolan understands what I want out of life. Nolan doesn't know what commitment means." She'd flinched at that, but lifted her chin. "At least he's willing to reach for something better. You've always been satisfied with adequate." That had stung more than her leaving. The implication that his hard work, his steady reliability, his commitment to building something secure was somehow a character flaw. Clay rolled over in bed, punching his pillow into a more comfortable shape. Tomorrow he'd tell his boss he needed the day off for the wedding. He'd buy himself a new shirt, maybe a tie-dye he'd go and watch. Nothing more. The event hall gleamed with strands of fairy lights and floral arrangements that probably cost more than Clay's monthly mortgage payment. He arrived exactly 12 minutes after the ceremony's scheduled start, slipping into the back row as Marissa was beginning her walk down the aisle. Clay had to admit she looked beautiful. Her dress caught the light as she moved, her smile radiant as she gazed ahead at Nolan. For a brief moment, Clay felt a twinge in his chest, not jealousy or regret, but acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that what they'd had was gone, replaced by this carefully orchestrated spectacle. The ceremony itself was mercifully brief. Clay sat perfectly still, his face neutral as he watched his ex-wife pledge herself to another man. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Clay noticed several guests glancing nervously in his direction. He kept his expression impassive as the newly married couple processed back down the aisle. Marissa's eyes met Clay's. For an instant, her confident smile faltered. Clay gave her the slightest nod, a simple acknowledgement of her gaze. Nothing more. The reception was held in an adjoining room, transformed with more lights, flowers, and elegantly set tables. Clay found his assigned seat at the very back of the room, of course, and settled in. "Didn't think you'd actually come." Derek's voice came from behind him. His friend clapped him on the shoulder as he sat down. "You okay?" "Fine," Clay said, and meant it. "Food better be good, though." Derek chuckled. "Open bar, at least. Saw your sister prowling around by the entrance." "She'll find us eventually," Clay replied, "when she's done cataloging all the ways this wedding offends her." Sure enough, Fallon appeared minutes later, sliding into the empty chair beside Clay. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense style that contrasted with the elaborate updos around them. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, eyeing the champagne fountain. "Who needs this much everything?" She turned to Clay, studying his face. "You hanging in there?" "I'm fine, Fal." Clay sipped his water. "Just watching the show." "Well, I'm watching him," Fallon replied, her narrowed gaze fixed on Nolan, who was working the room with practiced charm. "Mr. Perfect is spending a lot of time chatting up the blonde in the corner." Clay followed her gaze. Nolan was indeed leaning close to a woman in a gold dress, his hand casually touching her elbow as they laughed about something. Marissa was across the room, surrounded by chattering bridesmaids. "Not our problem anymore," Clay said simply. The meal was served, speeches were made. Clay ate quietly, observing rather than participating. He noted how Nolan seemed constantly in motion, circulating, laughing too loudly, checking his phone when he thought no one was looking. He saw how Marissa's eyes followed her new husband, a hint of uncertainty in her expression when she thought herself unobserved. When the dancing started, Clay stayed seated. Fallon disappeared to the bar, returning with 3 whiskeys. "Medicinal purposes," she declared, setting them down. Clay raised an eyebrow. "We driving tonight?" "I'm not," Derek said, raising his glass. "And neither is Fallon. We figured you might need backup, so we got rooms at the hotel next door." Clay felt a rush of gratitude for his friend and sister. Appreciate it, but I'm not planning on falling apart. Of course not, Derek replied easily. But a man shouldn't have to drive home from his ex-wife's wedding alone. That's just common sense. As the night progressed, Clay watched Marissa and Nolan move through their wedding reception like actors on a stage. Perfect smiles, perfect poses for photographs, perfect newlyweds. But he also saw the cracks beneath the surface. The way Nolan's attention wandered whenever Marissa was engaged elsewhere. The overly familiar way he touched the waist of a bridesmaid while Marissa was speaking to her parents. The slight tension in Marissa's shoulders when she rejoined him after he'd disappeared for 15 minutes. Time for toasts, Derek muttered as the DJ called for everyone's attention. Nolan took the microphone, smoothing his tie. His voice carried clearly through the room as he thanked everyone for coming and praised his beautiful bride. Then his gaze drifted toward the back of the room, finding Clay. Some of you may know Marissa was previously married, Nolan said, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. I'm just lucky I could rescue her from a life that was, well, stuck. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the crowd. Clay felt Fallon stiffen beside him. What a clown, she muttered. Derek put a firm hand on Clay's shoulder. Breathe, he said quietly. Clay kept his expression neutral, not giving Nolan the satisfaction of a reaction. He'd known something like this might happen, had prepared himself for it. What he hadn't prepared for was the young woman approaching the center of the room, her server's uniform marking her as event staff. She removed her cap, revealing a face that somehow looked familiar to Clay, though he couldn't place why. The young woman cleared her throat. I'm Harper, she announced, her voice trembling slightly. I'm Nolan's daughter. The room fell silent. Every head turned, first to the young woman, then to Nolan, whose confident smile had vanished. Clay leaned forward, suddenly very interested in what would happen next. The laughter that followed Nolan's toast curdled in the air as guests processed what they'd just heard. Clay felt dozens of eyes flick toward him, measuring his reaction to the public taunt. His jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. What a disgusting thing to say, Fallon whispered, her body tense as though ready to spring across the room. Especially at his own wedding. Clay said nothing. He'd spent 2 years working alongside shipment crews, controlling docks filled with tired, frustrated men. He'd learned that losing your temper meant losing control, and Clay never lost control that Derek's hand remained firm on Clay's shoulder. Breathe, he repeated. I'm fine, Clay muttered, and he was. The dig had landed exactly as he'd expected, Nolan establishing dominance, marking territory, puffing himself up at Clay's expense. Marissa stood beside her new husband, her smile faltering slightly at his words. For just a moment, her eyes found Clay's across the room, something like apology flashing across her face before she looked away. The DJ quickly took the microphone, announcing the next speech Marissa's maid of honor, a college friend Clay vaguely remembered. But before she could begin, movement near the back of the room caught everyone's attention that a young server stepped forward, removing her cap. I'm Harper, the young woman announced, her voice wavering but determined. I'm Nolan's daughter. The silence that followed was absolute. Clay watched as Nolan's face drained of color, his confident posture evaporating. I wasn't invited to this wedding, Harper continued, gaining strength with each word. But then, Dad hasn't invited me to much of anything since I was 7. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth. She turned to Nolan, confusion written across her face. Harper, this isn't the place, Nolan said, attempting to regain his composure. We can talk privately. No, we can't, Harper interrupted. Because every time I try to talk to you privately, you have an excuse, or you're busy, or you send me to voicemail. Clay watched, fascinated. The girl couldn't be more than 19, but she stood her ground with a quiet dignity that impressed him. I wouldn't be here at all, Harper continued, except I heard you were getting married, and I thought your new wife deserved to know what she's getting into. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. I've been keeping track of Dad's business trips for the past year, the ones that never quite matched up with his company's calendar. Nolan stepped forward. That's enough. No, it isn't, Harper replied firmly. Not when you've been seeing women in Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver while dating Marissa. Not when you've been lying about your finances and your job performance. Not when you've been promising Marissa a life you can't actually deliver. Marissa's face had gone pale. She stood frozen beside the head table, one hand gripping the back of a chair for support. Harper held up her phone. I have dates, photos, messages. I have proof of everything I'm saying. She looked directly at Marissa. I'm sorry to do this at your wedding, but I wish someone had told my mom before she married him. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clay saw phones being discreetly raised, guests capturing the unfolding drama. This is absurd, Nolan said loudly, attempting to reclaim control of the situation. Harper has had issues. She's making this up. May 12th, Harper cut in. You told Marissa you were at a sales conference in Portland. You were actually with a woman named Jamie at the Riverfront Hotel. I have the receipt where you used your company card. Nolan's face flushed. You've been spying on me? Going through my things? No, Harper replied calmly. Your secretary Barbara has always liked me. She also doesn't appreciate covering for your affairs. The room erupted in whispers. Clay remained silent, watching as Nolan's perfect day crumbled around him. The man who had taken such pleasure in publicly mocking him minutes ago now stood exposed, his carefully constructed image shattering. Harper wasn't finished. September 23rd. You told Marissa you were meeting clients in Seattle. You were with a woman named Vanessa. I have the hotel receipt and text messages. That's enough, Nolan shouted, but Harper stood her ground. And there's the money, she continued. The commission checks you've been inflating when you talk about them. The second mortgage on your condo that Marissa doesn't know about. The credit card debt. Marissa finally found her voice. What's she talking about, Nolan? She's lying, Nolan insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. She's trying to ruin our day. I'm trying to save you, Harper said quietly to Marissa. Before you end up like my mom left with nothing when he gets bored and moves on. The wedding planner finally intervened, attempting to guide Harper away from the center of the room. But the damage was done. Guests were texting, whispering, some already discreetly heading for the exits. Clay remained seated, watching as the perfect wedding disintegrated into chaos. Fallon leaned toward Clay, her eyes wide. Did you know about this? The daughter? Clay shook his head slightly. Didn't have to, he replied, his voice cold. Men like him always blow themselves up. The scene before them continued to unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Marissa had moved away from Nolan, conferring urgently with her parents and maid of honor. Nolan stood abandoned at the head table, attempting to speak with guests who were suddenly finding reasons to be elsewhere. Should we go? Derek asked, finishing his whiskey. This feels like a good time to make an exit. Clay considered, then shook his head. Not yet. He wanted to see this through. Not out of malice or pleasure in Marissa's pain, but because he needed the finality of it. Needed to witness the collapse of the illusion that had taken his marriage. Across the room, Harper was speaking quietly with the wedding planner and a man who appeared to be security. She didn't look frightened or apologetic, just tired, as though a great weight had finally been set down. Clay found himself respecting the young woman's courage. It couldn't have been easy to stand up like that, to publicly confront her father and expose his lies that Marissa's father approached Nolan, his face thunderous. Though Clay couldn't hear their words, the body language told the story. Nolan defensive, Marissa's father accusatory, jabbing a finger at Nolan's chest. $10 says there's a punch thrown in the next 5 minutes, Derek muttered. Clay shook his head. Marissa's dad is all talk. Always has been. Sure enough, after a heated exchange, Marissa's father stormed away without physical confrontation. Nolan immediately retreated to the bar, downing a drink in one swallow. Marissa herself had disappeared, presumably to a back room with her mother and bridesmaids. Clay. He turned at the sound of his name. Harper stood beside their table, her server's uniform incongruous among the wedding finery. You're Clay Mercer, right? She asked. Marissa's ex-husband? Clay nodded, studying the young woman's face. Now that she was closer, he could see hints of Nolan in her features, the shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw. I'm sorry if I caused a scene, she said, but I couldn't let him do it again. You did what you needed to do. Clay replied simply. Harper twisted her hands together. I should go. They'll probably fire me, but it was worth it. Wait, Fallon said, pulling out a chair. Sit for a minute. You look like you could use a break. Harper hesitated, then sat down, exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. How did you end up working this wedding? Derek asked, sliding his untouched water glass toward her. I work for the catering company, Harper explained, taking a grateful sip. I didn't know it was Dad's wedding until I showed up for the shift. When I saw him, I don't know, something broke inside me. All those years of watching him walk away, listening to his excuses. She shook her head. I couldn't stand by and watch him do it to someone else. Clay nodded, understanding perfectly. Sometimes you reached a breaking point where silence was no longer an option. What will you do now? He asked. Harper shrugged. Go back to school. Keep working. I'm studying nursing at the community college. Clay noticed how Fallon straightened at this information. Her professional interest peaked. Pacific Western? Fallon asked. I'm a nurse at Tacoma General. They have a good program there. Harper nodded. That's the one. It's tough balancing work and classes, but I'm making it work. Clay glanced around the room. The wedding reception was effectively over, though some guests remained, clustered in groups, talking animatedly. The three-tiered wedding cake stood untouched, the tiny figurines of bride and groom a mockery of the evening's events. You should go, Clay told Harper gently, before this gets more complicated. She nodded, rising from the chair. Thank you. For not judging me, I guess. Nothing to judge, Clay replied honestly. You told the truth. After Harper left, Clay, Fallon, and Derek sat in silence, watching the remnants of the celebration disintegrate around them. You okay? Fallon asked eventually. Clay considered the question. Was he okay? He'd watched his ex-wife's wedding implode in the most spectacular fashion possible. He'd seen the man she'd left him for exposed as a fraud and a cheat. Yeah, he said finally. I'm good. And he was. There was no joy in Marissa's pain, but there was a certain peace in the confirmation that he hadn't been the problem. That the more she'd been seeking had turned out to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. Let's go, he said, standing. Nothing more to see here. As they walked toward the exit, Clay caught a glimpse of Marissa through a partially open door still in her wedding dress. Mascara streaked down her face, surrounded by concerned friends. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. Clay didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge her pain or her tears. He simply turned and walked out into the cool night air, leaving the broken celebration behind. The weeks following the wedding disaster unfolded exactly as Clay had predicted. Though he made no effort to follow the drama, information found its way to him through shared acquaintances and Tacoma's surprisingly efficient gossip network. Monday morning at the shipping warehouse, Clay reviewed manifests at his desk when Tim from accounting stopped by, coffee in hand. Heard you were at the Langley Phelps wedding, Tim said, leaning against the doorframe. Sounds like it was eventful. Clay continued checking numbers. Wouldn't know. Left early. Well, you didn't miss much after just the father of the bride asking for refund from the venue. Tim sipped his coffee. My wife's cousin works there. Said the groom was escorted out before they even cut the cake. Clay made a non-committal sound, neither encouraging nor discouraging the conversation. Guess the daughter had receipts, Tim continued. Literally. Hotel receipts, dinner tabs, flowers sent to other women. All while he was with Marissa. Clay initialed the bottom of the manifest and moved to the next one. Not my business. Tim got the hint and retreated, but he wasn't the last to bring news over the following days. Clay deflected each conversation with minimal responses, neither showing interest nor shutting people down completely. Let them talk. It didn't change his work or his life. 3 weeks after the wedding, Clay was restocking his refrigerator when his phone buzzed with a text. He almost dropped the carton of milk when he saw Marissa's name on the screen, a name he hadn't deleted but hadn't seen in nearly 2 years that I didn't know. I'm so sorry. 7 words that carried the weight of a collapsed future, a humiliating wedding day, and what Clay imagined were long nights of recrimination and regret. He stared at the message for a full minute, milk warming in his hand. Then he deleted it without replying, put away his groceries, and went for a run. The following evening, Fallon stopped by with takeout and updates she knew Clay wouldn't seek out himself. Heard through the hospital grapevine that Nolan's been placed on administrative leave, she said, unpacking containers of Thai food on Clay's kitchen counter. Turns out those inflated sales numbers weren't just talk. He's been falsifying reports to boost his commissions. Clay grabbed plates from the cabinet. Not surprised. And Fallon continued, clearly enjoying her role as information courier. Marissa moved back in with her parents. Temporarily, she says, but who knows? Clay divided rice onto the plates, his movements efficient and precise. The universe balances eventually, he said simply. They ate on the back porch, the summer evening warm around them. Clay listened as Fallon detailed what she knew: how Nolan's company was auditing all his accounts, how his previous affairs had surfaced like corpses in a flood, how Marissa had discovered credit cards she knew nothing about. She called Mom, Fallon said after a while, watching Clay closely for his reaction. Clay paused mid-bite. What for? To ask about you, I think. Mom shut it down fast. Told her you were doing fine and didn't need her checking up. Clay nodded, grateful for his mother's intervention. The last thing he wanted was Marissa seeking him out, looking for forgiveness, comparison, confirmation that she'd made a mistake. She's got to handle her own mess, Clay said firmly. Not our problem. That's what Mom told her. Fallon poked at her pad thai. But you should know she might try to reach out. Clay thought about the deleted text message. Already did. I didn't respond. Fallon smiled, approval evident. Good for you. 2 days later, while Clay was fueling his truck at a gas station across town, a familiar sedan pulled up to the adjacent pump. He recognized Marissa's car, not the one they'd shared during their marriage, but the newer model she'd bought after moving in with Nolan. For a moment, he considered getting back in his truck and leaving, even with the tank only half full. But that would mean running, and Clay Mercer didn't run. He continued filling his tank, his back to her car, hoping she wouldn't notice him. And no such luck. Clay. He turned, his face carefully neutral. Marissa stood by her car, keys clutched tightly in her hand. She looked different, thinner, tired, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Marissa, he acknowledged with a slight nod. She faltered, clearly not having planned what to say if she encountered him. I tried texting you. I saw. The gas pump clicked off, and Clay replaced the nozzle. Did you delete it? She took a step closer, then stopped when Clay's expression didn't change. Yes. The single word hung between them. Marissa's eyes dropped to the pavement. I understand, she said quietly. I just want to say I'm sorry. For everything. Especially what Nolan said at the wedding. Clay screwed his gas cap back on. Not your fault what another man says. But I should have stopped him. I should have. She trailed off, the multitude of things she should have done too numerous to list. Clay reached for his wallet to retrieve his receipt. It's done, Marissa. Over and handled. Are you? She hesitated again. Are you happy, Clay? The question caught him off guard. Was he happy? It wasn't a question he often asked himself. He was stable, secure, content with his work, his home, his friendships. I'm good, he said finally. Build back what matters. Marissa nodded, a sad smile flitting across her face. I'm glad. You deserved better than what I did. Clay didn't confirm or deny this. Didn't offer absolution or further conversation. He simply folded his receipt, tucked it into his wallet, and said, Take care, Marissa. He walked back to his truck, climbed in, and drove away without looking back. In his rearview mirror, he could see her still standing by the pump, watching him go. That night, Clay deleted Marissa's contact information from his phone. Not out of anger or pain, but because it was simply no longer needed. A week later, Clay was reviewing staffing schedules in his office when his desk phone rang. Shipping, Mercer speaking. Mr. Mercer? This is Harper Phelps. Clay straightened in his chair, surprised. Harper, what can I do for you? I hope it's okay that I called your work, she said, sounding uncertain. Your sister gave me the number when I ran into her at the hospital cafeteria. I'm doing clinical rotations there. It's fine, Clay assured her. Everything okay? Yes. Well, mostly. Harper paused. I was wondering if you might have time to meet for coffee sometime. There's something I'd like to talk to you about. Clay hesitated. He'd thought about Harper occasionally since the wedding, impressed by her courage, but he had no desire to be pulled back into the drama surrounding Marissa and Nolan, as if sensing his reluctance. Harper quickly added, "It's not about all that. Not directly, anyway. It's just something I need to say in person." Clay checked his watch. "I'm off at 4 today. There's a diner across from Tacoma General. Could meet you there at 4:30 if that works." "That's perfect," Harper said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer." "Clay," he corrected automatically. "Clay," she repeated. "I'll see you at 4:30. The diner was half empty when Clay arrived, the afternoon lull between lunch and dinner rushes. Harper was already there, seated in a booth by the window, nursing a cup of coffee and looking through what appeared to be textbooks. She glanced up as Clay approached, offering a tentative smile. "Thanks for coming." Clay slid into the booth across from her. "No problem." A waitress materialized with menus and a coffee pot. Clay accepted a cup, ordered a slice of apple pie, and waited until they were alone again before speaking. "So," he said, "what did you want to talk about?" Harper closed her textbook, pushing it aside. "First, I wanted to thank you for how you treated me at the wedding. You were one of the only people who didn't look at me like I was either crazy or horrible for what I did." Clay shrugged. "You told the truth. Sometimes that's necessary. That's kind of why I wanted to talk to you," Harper continued. "After everything happened, I kept thinking about how calm you were. Like you knew it would all fall apart eventually. I had my suspicions about Nolan," Clay admitted, "even before he and Marissa got together. Men who talk that big usually have something to hide." Harper nodded, turning her coffee cup in slow circles. "I want to make sure you knew I didn't do it for you. I mean, not to help you get back at Marissa or anything like that. Never thought you did," Clay assured her. "Good." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Because I did it for me. And maybe a little bit for Marissa, even though I don't know her. She looked up, meeting Clay's gaze. "I've watched my dad hurt people my whole life. My mom, me, his girlfriends, and everyone just let him get away with it because he's charming and confident and acts like he has all the answers." Clay nodded, understanding completely. Some people build their lives on appearances. Works until it doesn't. Exactly. Harper took a sip of her coffee. "Anyway, after the wedding, I lost my job with the catering company, which I expected." "Sorry to hear that," Clay said, meaning it. Harper shrugged. "It's okay. It wasn't a great job anyway, but it's making it harder to pay for school, and with my clinical rotations, I don't have a lot of flexible time for work." Clay studied her for a moment. Harper wasn't asking for help directly, but he could read between the lines. "We hire part-time at the warehouse," he said. "Office work mostly. Filing, data entry, basic stuff. Hours can be flexible around school schedules." Hope flickered in Harper's eyes. "Really? That sounds perfect." "Can't promise anything," Clay cautioned. "But I can put in a word with HR. We're always shorthanded on the administrative side." "I would really appreciate that," Harper said earnestly. "I'm a hard worker, I promise." "I believe you," Clay replied, and he did. Anyone with the courage to stand up like she had at the wedding wouldn't shy away from hard work. Their conversation shifted to Harper's nursing program, her career goals, her life before Tacoma. Clay found himself impressed by her resilience, her clear-eyed view of her situation and her father's failings. As they finished their coffee, Harper pulled an envelope from her bag. "One more thing. I thought you should have these." Clay accepted the envelope but didn't open it. "What is it?" "Copies of some of the evidence about Nolan," Harper explained, "in case Marissa or anyone tries to paint you as the bad guy in all this. I know how my dad operates. He's probably already spinning some story about how you put me up to it or something." Clay set the envelope on the table between them. "Don't need these. Not interested in proving anything to anyone." Harper looked surprised. "But what if he tries to blame you?" "Let him," Clay replied simply. "People who know me know the truth. People who believe him weren't worth my time anyway." Harper considered this, then slowly nodded. "That's actually really impressive." Clay shrugged. "Just practical. Can't control what others think or say. Can only control myself." "I wish I could be that detached about it all," Harper admitted. "Comes with time," Clay told her, "and distance." As they prepared to leave, Clay reached into his wallet and pulled out his business card. "My direct line at work," he said, handing it to her. Call if you need a reference for that job application. Or anything else. Harper accepted the card carefully, as though it represented more than just contact information. Thank you, she said. For everything. Clay nodded, uncomfortable with her gratitude. You did the hard part yourself, standing up when it mattered. Harper smiled, a genuine smile that reminded Clay that despite everything she'd been through, she was still young, still finding her way in the world. If you don't mind me saying, she said as they walked out of the diner, Marissa made a huge mistake leaving you. My dad might talk big, but you're the one with actual substance. Clay didn't respond directly, but he felt a small warmth of appreciation for the young woman's perception. Let me know about that job application, he said instead. HR's always slow, so I'll need to nudge them. I will, Harper promised. And thanks for listening today. Clay watched her walk toward the hospital, textbooks clutched to her chest, her posture straight and determined despite everything. He found himself hoping she'd find her way, find the stability and security that neither of her parents seemed capable of providing. Then he got in his truck and headed home, the envelope of evidence left behind on the diner table, unneeded and unwanted. The following Saturday, Clay and Derek sat outside the auto shop, cold beers in hand as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Derek had just finished working on Clay's truck, a simple oil change and inspection that had turned into an afternoon of companionable work and conversation. Heard from Marissa lately? Derek asked, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Clay shook his head. Saw her once at a gas station. Brief conversation. Nothing since. Probably for the best, Derek commented, taking a pull from his beer. Clay's phone rang. Fallon's name flashed on the screen. Hey, Fal, he answered, putting the call on speaker so Derek could hear. You're not going to believe this, Fallon said without preamble. Marissa filed for divorce. Clay and Derek exchanged glances. Already, Derek asked. Barely a month after the wedding, Fallon confirmed, her voice gleeful. And it gets better. Nolan's been formally terminated from his job. Something about falsified expense reports and improper client relationships. He's toxic in the industry, now no one will touch him. Clay took a slow sip of his beer, letting the information settle. How do you know all this? Harper told me, Fallon replied. She stops by the nurse's station, sometimes during her clinicals. Oh, and get this, she got the job at your warehouse. Started orientation yesterday. Clay nodded, pleased it had worked out. Good for her. You know what this means, right? Fallon pressed. Marissa's whole, perfect new life has completely fallen apart. The marriage, the fancy house, the glamorous husband, all of it, gone in a month. Clay didn't respond immediately. He felt no joy in Marissa's pain, but he couldn't deny a certain satisfaction in the knowledge that the life she'd left him for had proven to be nothing but illusion. You still there? Fallon asked. Yeah, Clay replied. Just thinking. About what? About how sometimes staying still is the smartest move, he said. Let others run around, chase shiny things. When the dust settles, you're still standing. Derek grinned at him across the cooling engine of the truck. Didn't even have to lift a finger, he said, raising his beer in a mock toast. Clay clinked his bottle against his friend's. Best kind of win, he agreed quietly. After saying goodbye to Fallon, Clay and Derek sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sunset painted the western sky in shades of orange and gold. The auto shop lot was quiet, most of the day's customers long gone. You know, Derek said eventually, part of me thought you might feel sorry for her. Marissa, I mean, after everything blew up. Clay considered this. Don't wish her ill, he said truthfully, but don't feel sorry for her either. She made her choices. Fair enough, Derek agreed. Clay leaned back in his chair, feeling the day's tensions ease from his shoulders. There was something deeply satisfying about sitting here, outside an honest mechanic's shop, drinking a cold beer with a trusted friend, knowing he'd built something solid and real. He thought about the contrast Nolan's carefully constructed facade of success versus Clay's modest but genuine achievement. The big house versus the manageable mortgage. The flashy job title versus the steady work. Sometimes I wonder, Clay said, breaking the comfortable silence, if she ever realized what she was throwing away. Derek raised an eyebrow. Getting philosophical on me, Mercer? Clay shook his head. Just thinking out loud. Not about getting back together or anything like that. Just about values. Well, Derek said, finishing his beer, I'd say the evidence speaks for itself. You're here, steady as always. She's filing divorce papers 1 month after her wedding. Clay nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. When you put it that way. As the twilight deepened around them, Clay felt a sense of completion, of closure. The chapter of his life that included Marissa was truly finished now. Not with dramatic confrontations or tearful reconciliations, but with the simple, undeniable reality of their diverging paths. He had stayed true to himself, to his values, to his understanding of what mattered in life. And in the end, that steadfastness had proven to be its own reward. Need to get going, Clay said, eventually standing and stretching. Early shift tomorrow. Derek nodded, gathering the empty bottles. Same time next weekend? Game's on at 4. I'll bring the food, Clay promised. As he drove home through the familiar streets of Tacoma, Clay felt something settle within him, a quiet satisfaction, a sense of rightness. He hadn't needed to fight, to argue, to prove himself. He simply needed to stand firm, to be who he'd always been. And in the end, that had been enough. More than enough that IT had been a victory.